Shannon Norton, I wanted to hear all about your photography because you had a time lapse that really went viral recently. But let's go back to how you got started and when you started shooting space.
Well, as a young kid, I guess I was always interested in space, like most of us, always looking up and that. But it wasn't until I went on actually, you wouldn't believe it, scuba diving holiday with my wife about 4 years ago. We went to a little island called Heron Island. It's about 80 kilometres off the coast of Australia, so of course it's very dark, no city light pollution. And we looked up after dinner one night, and we could see the Milky Way, like as clear as day. And I had a little camera with me, and I said to my wife, I said, I wonder if I can get a picture of that. And so we went back to my room, and I grabbed my camera and pointed up, and we just spent like a good couple of hours just imaging, and the photos that were coming up the Milky Way were just magical. And that's sort of what kickstarted it all for me. When I got home, I did some research on how, like, better cameras, and then after about 6 months, I bought my first telescope, and then yeah, it just sort of snowballed from there. And now, as you can see, I've got about 5 telescopes and a few different cameras. So yeah, it was just a diving trip with my wife that started everything.
Do you have a day job? Is this your hobby or are you doing this full
No,
time?
I do have a day job. So by day, I'm an explosives technician. So I teach people how to use explosives. So completely opposite to what I do. This is just a hobby.
Okay, so let's talk about the equipment that you use because I know
Yeah,
it's got to be, I don't know that much about photography and then especially with a telescope. So how does that work? Do you hook a camera up to a telescope
yeah,
and then what are you using specifically?
exactly that. So this is one of my smaller telescopes here. Um, it works like a very long camera lens, I guess. You just plug your camera onto the end of this, and then you can shoot the sky with it. But obviously, we people don't take into account the Earth's rotation. So the stars are constantly moving. So I have to have my telescopes on a tracking mount that will actually line up with the south or north pole, whichever area you live in, and it will track the stars. So it will follow. So that allows us to take longer exposures. So I can take without the stars moving in my picture, if it makes sense.
Can you leave it and like go to sleep or do you have to stay there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually, because the equipment costs a lot of money, I've actually got a little security camera that I watch to see if it's raining or anything like that. And I constantly wake up in the middle of the night and I'm checking, is it still there? Is it getting rained on? So,
So how
yeah.
did you start shooting the sun? Because I feel like a lot of people shoot at night, and not as many people are shooting the sun. And so when this image came out, people were like, "What? This is what the sun looks like? How did you get this image, and where did this start from?"
So in Australia, I live on the east coast of Australia, up in Queensland, sort of more the north. And during our summer months, we get a lot of rain, a lot of clouds. And I was losing a lot of my nights to clouds, and I was getting really frustrated, and I couldn't take photos. And then I started seeing online some photos of the sun, and I thought to myself, hang on, if I buy a solar telescope, I can actually try and image during the day. So
People in the US are getting ready for the eclipse, and they want to just like take their phone and point it at the sun. You can't do that, right? So what kind of protective measures can you do with cameras, with telescopes,
yeah,
to protect them?
so if you like, you can buy a basic solar film, which is just like it looks like a sheet of alfoil, I guess, and you put it over your camera lens, and that blocks all the harmful rays. It's a cheap alternative way to image the sun. You could take a photograph with your iPhone, I guess, but it's not going to be great because the sun being so bright. So I'd advise to use the solar film over your camera lens, or if you really want to, you can go down the route of buying a dedicated solar telescope, but they aren't cheap, but you'll get much better results. You'll get really good high definition that you see in some of the pictures online.
Cool. Okay, let's go back to the time lapse that you took. Can you
Yep.
tell me when you took that and take me through that day of how you shot it, how long, how many images that was, how you put it together?
That was shot in November. I didn't actually get around to uploading it on Instagram until probably mid-December. So that was shot in my backyard here in Australia, just from around 12 lunchtime to about 3 p.m., which is when my children nap. So when I put my kids down for a sleep, I usually run out and set everything up. That consisted of a lot of work, and I think that's why it took me so long. So it was a time lapse over 3 hours. So the way we image the sun with atmospheric disturbance and all that is we'll actually take a lot of short videos. So I took a 30-second video, sorry, a 10-second video every 20 seconds for 3 hours. And then I used all the individual frames from those videos, which turned out to be about 160,000 frames of still photos. It's quite a lot. And then I used a computer program to average out the best of those because some of them come blurry, some are good, and you use an algorithm on a computer that selects the best of those frames. So I used the best 40,000 to finish my time lapse. I edited each photo individually and then put them all together like you would a normal movie. You play all those frames together like a movie, 25 frames per second.
And then once it was up, people were just amazed because of what you could see happening in the time lapse. So can you tell me about some of the stuff you can see in this image?
Yeah, so it starts out with the full disk of the sun, and then it zooms into solar prominences, which looks like little flames burning on the limb of the sun. So it has been sped up. You can't see them that fast in real time, so I've sped the video up a little bit just to show the movement of these solar prominences. And it's just a lot of hydrogen on the sun being burned and moved around, and then towards the end of the video, not many people have noticed, but you see in the center of the sun, on one of the sunspots, you see a little bit of a ejection, and that's actually a solar flare in the end of that video, which is the sun releasing a huge amount of energy, which is, as you probably know, responsible for all of our northern lights and aurora that we get here on Earth. So, yes, at the very end of that video, it zooms into the sunspot, and you can if you look closely, you can see energy dispersion there, and that's a solar flare, which they're quite hard to record because we're not the scientists aren't really amazing at predicting when they're going to come. So I was quite lucky with that one.
So has anybody reached out to you to use your images as far as like NASA?
No, I
Anybody
wish.
looking to like study them for scientific reasons?
Not on that sense. No, I wish because I'd love to work with some people and help myself, I guess, understand more what I'm looking at and other people, but not quite there yet, unfortunately. If anyone's open, I'd be love to talk about it. It's been used. A few people reached out to me, a few science professors and that from different universities around the world, and they wanted to use it in their documentaries and their pieces. And I think I've sent it to about 5 or 6 different professors around the world so far, and they've credited me in their work. So it's a nice feeling. It's good that people are so interested in it.
What's next? Are you working on anything now? Are you continuing to shoot the sun as we are in this solar maximum?
Yes, exactly that. That was the reason I bought the scope. Coming into solar maximum, as we know, in the next year or two, the sun activity is really ramping up. So most chances I get, I'm actually getting my solar telescope out there and trying to film the sun as much as I can. I've been starting with a little bit of planetary imaging, the planets and things like that as well. But the sun's my happy place. It's the only thing in the sky that you can look at half an hour later and can look completely different. All the planets, the nebulae, the galaxies, everything in the sky, they look identical because they're so far away. With the light traveling to Earth, you can look at it every 2 years and it looks exactly the same. But I can come inside, have a coffee, go back outside and look in my telescope again, and the sun can look completely different. It's the only thing we look at with our telescopes that's changing so much.
Have you learned anything by watching the sun? Anything that really surprised you?
Just the sheer size. So, if with our images of the sun, we can count the size of our pixels, and then we can run a scale as to the size of Earth. So, the very first time I imaged the sun, I counted the pixels of the sun and got a picture of a black dot of Earth, and I put it next to it with a scale, and I was blown away when I actually realized how big the sun is compared to us. If anything, watching the sun just makes me feel a little bit insignificant, I guess. There's so much more out there that's a lot bigger than us, I should say. If you're out there looking at the stars at night, go and buy a telescope. You can get some cheap ones, or go and join your local astronomy club. they'll be happy to have you. They'll let you look through all the telescopes for free. And, we just love astronomers. We love sharing this. This is why we do it. We share the night sky with people who don't, or the day sky in this case, with people who don't get to see it normally. So just chase that curiosity, and there's so much to be found up there in the sky. So yeah, it won't disappoint.
Is it ever overwhelming? Like, how far in the distance have you gotten? How far away have you shot?
I've shot a lot of nebulae and galaxies that are, 500 light years away or a few thousand light years away, and the thing is, they might not even be there anymore. The light's just still traveling towards my telescope. And so I look at these objects with my telescopes, and I quite often wonder, my wife and I sit out the back looking through the eyepiece, and we wonder, are these still here? Are these stars still here? They could have died or burnt out a long time ago. And, they're a few thousand light years away. So um, another point to that is, if there was intelligent life on the closest star to us or anything like that, and they had a telescope and looked at us, they'd be seeing the revolution, they'd be seeing the dinosaurs, and so it's a really, once you go down that rabbit hole, there's so much that we don't, yeah, that we don't consider on a daily basis. So